So in my last video, I talked about how we lost a lot of money due to the fact that there was so much theft that happened in my business, and we had so many issues with profitability. In this video, I want to talk about what we are doing to ensure that that never repeats itself, and what we have done to ensure that we plug the leak to the best of our ability so that we can be as profitable as ever. Earlier this year, when we had our annual meeting, I felt that the contribution of business was not just in marketing, because we had that lockdown, and nobody really had marketing lockdown, but we had strategies where we could actually implement marketing for a long period of time. But the major concern of the business was we kept making money and we kept losing money, which I highlighted in my past video. And the issue was basically theft. It was basically the fact that we were being stolen from. We did not have checks and balances to ensure that we were profited, in the sense that the cost of production was equal to or more than revenue, which is a problem. Over the past few months, we have implemented a lot of things to ensure, not really a lot, but we have implemented some things to ensure that there are checks and balances, and there are things that we are putting in place to ensure that none of this actually really happens again. I tried as much as possible to inject accountability back into the business, because I realized that was lacking. Accountability was majorly the issue, and I'm going to go through how I actually implemented accountability into my business, because accountability is a very, very big word, but from what I have learned so far, I feel that accountability is just making sure that you are responsible for something, and if you are given task A to do, you are actually responsible for it. Even I do have to be held accountable to a job that I'm given. I cannot just say because I own the business, I will not do anything in the business. I will just ensure that everything is on autopilot. And that's one thing I've realized, that in business, especially in this stage of my business, there's no middle point. There's no autopilot. You are either moving forward or you're either going backward. And that's what I feel. That's what I feel to realize. You're either moving forward or you're either going backward. You cannot just put everything on autopilot and say that, oh, this is passive income. You have to put in a level of effort to ensure that every system in the machine actually works. So the first thing that I did to ensure that I injected accountability back into the system was I put back friction in using money. What do I mean by this? So previously, I really did not put a check into how cash was spent. Okay, now a food business is a cash rich business. Not in terms of profitability, but in terms that a lot of cash comes into the business. When somebody wants to buy a plate of food, they give you cash. Some people give physical cash, and that cash has been accounted for. The manager of the store can just, feel that, oh, something is finished, because we give that liberty. I give that liberty to ensure that, we give a certain level of trust. But in giving that level of trust, I just abdicated the responsibility to say, oh, if there's any little thing in the store that needs fixing, or that needs anything, you never have to tell me. Just ensure that you do it and then you report it. And that was a very, very huge mistake, because it led to a certain level of overdrive, in the sense that they were not responsible for their expenditure, because there was no check. I had no check to say, okay, what exactly did you spend money on? Every expense needs to be tracked, especially in a cash-rich business. Every expense needs to be checked. And I failed to do that. And that's why one thing we went back to: you don't take out cash without notifying me first and getting permission to use cash first. And that's the first thing that we implemented to actually gauge whether it's actually going to work, which did significantly decrease our expenditures, especially our utility expenses. It significantly reduced that. The second thing that I did was I went back to keeping books. So we have a very simple way of, bookkeeping. At least presently, we don't do a lot of elaborate bookkeeping where we have cash flow statement, balance sheets, and stuff. We just have a profit and loss statement. And I outsource that. And there's nothing wrong with outsourcing that inherently. But when I outsourced that, I now abdicated my financial responsibility, in the sense that I didn't actually know exactly what's happening anymore, because the daily expenses were not hitting me in my face. So we were doing it, okay, every month, we'll do the bookkeeping once, and then we'll get over with it. I'll just look at the profit and loss, and then I'll say, oh, this is how it is. But then I went back to keeping the books, and I do it as frequently as possible, once a week or twice a week, to ensure that everything is up to date. And what this enables me to do is to see the activities of the store. And as I'm like looking through the report, and I'm transferring that to the Excel sheet, and I think I made a video on that, on how to do that. I then realized that there are some errors that I have not been seeing so far, and that's because I abdicated my responsibility. There are some errors that were made that I did not see. But because I'm doing it frequently, I'm able to see them and point it out, and then get feedback almost immediately, instead of waiting for like a month to like get that feedback, and then that feedback is already like stale or something, because like so much time has passed from when the events actually happened. But being face to face with the reports every day, I'm able to see the chain of errors, and then I'm able to correct that and get feedback as soon as possible and make changes quickly. So the third thing that I implemented was I ensured that my managers knew how to do their jobs. Now in our business we have what we call reports, and I think every business has that. Reports are basically like, you report the items that are in your store, the items that are remaining, what exactly is finished, what exactly is not finished. Basically, it's generic to any business. There are reports to how the previous day went, so that you don't have to be in the store every day doing everything yourself. And this goes back to my second point, where I took on the books, because I was no longer interacting with the reports directly. Is what they tell me that I'm going to go with. And then that led to not question that lets not question the accountability of the managers. And what do I mean by that? It also meant that they too is what their staff tell them that they tell me. There's no physical verification of the items. So it just meant that we were just like being foolish. You are being plain. That was just being foolish. So I now went back to ensure that we actually knew our jobs. Your job as a manager is not to just writing a report, is to ensure that your report directly correlates with what is in the outlet or what is in the store. And it might seem like common knowledge, but this is the distinction between profit and loss. And this is what I've come to figure out. If that report that they're sending to me does not directly correlate to what is in the store exactly to a dime, then we are just basically fooling ourselves. And that's what I basically let everyone know in the organization. That the report is let's say is 70% of your job responsibilities. Is ensuring that everything is up to standard. Right? The remaining 30% is ensuring that the store works well. But that reporting is where you would put most of your time in a day, to ensure that everything is counted properly, to ensure that there's no theft. And then I made sure that they knew how to do that, because there was a lot of friction. And when I see a lot of friction in my staff's attitude, I take a step back and realize that maybe it's just because they don't know how to do a particular thing. Right? So I went back to training again and say, okay, everything has to be counted like this. What do you do when you come to the store? This is what I do. All right. Now, adjust this, adjust that, adjust this, adjust that. When you come to the store, make sure this is counted, make sure that is counted, make sure this is counted, make sure that's counted. And then make sure exactly that this is how it's supposed to look like. Don't send me a report that doesn't correlate. If there's any excuse that why something doesn't correlate, it should be stated, or you should tell me, and then it should be stated on the report. But if there's one item, if there is one bottle of water in the store, on your report, it should not say two bottle of water, it should say one bottle of water. If anything happens to the other bottle of water, then you should let me know before you write it in your report, because your report should be a statement of fact and not fiction. So I make basically ensure that everyone did their jobs. And then the fourth thing is I adjusted consequences. There was little or no consequences to, let's say, an item being missing. It's like, oh, you pay for that. You might pay for that, you might not pay for that. It's like, oh, you're a family, everybody should do what they're supposed to do. and there are no really consequences to anything. So I realized that actions have consequences, right? This is a business, not a charity organization. So there should be consequences to actions. And what I did first was I ensure that if an item is missing, it's being paid for in full. It's being assumed that if a particular item is missing, that item was stolen. That's the first assumption. Because if it's not stated in the report as to why an item is missing, that just means that an item is stolen. Because it's the manager's responsibility to report things as it is. And if it's not being reported in that particular way, the manager is going to bear responsibility. I'm not going to put the kitchen staff because the manager has exonerated the kitchen staff responsibilities directly on the managers. It's not necessarily because I want to punish you, it's putting consequences to actions to avoid theft. And this whole thing will be put it just to avoid theft because theft is an actual big issue which I did not actually realize in this food business game.
So the last thing I implemented was physical verification. Now, this would seem so dumb. Like someone who has been in business watching this video would look at this video and be like, this is like a no-brainer, right? Like, but for years we have not implemented this, or I did not implement this, and it's physical verification. What that means is if they send in a report, right? I would I don't usually physically verify, and that comes back to basically incompetence on my part. But that's that has changed, right? We implemented the physical verification part in the sense that now, like, I would choose a random day of the week where I go to each outlet and I just go and verify that what they wrote in the report tallies with what is actually in the store. Like now that I look back at it, I was like, how can I be this dumb, right? Like, who does not check what your staff does? Like, who doesn't? Anyways, anyways, the whole point of it is
The entire processes that were put in place were not actually new things, and it's basically a no-brainer for you to do these things. But basically, this is me paying my ignorance debt, right? It's me not knowing and me having this whole, everything coming together to make sure that my foolishness was exemplified and affected the entire business for me to come back to my senses.